Hi, everybody. It's JT from the CC and JT Amateur Hour Production Values Go to Die. Joining us today is Joel C. Flanagan-Grannemann. Grannemann, I knew I was going to mess that up.
No, you got it. You got
Help
it.
me out, Joel. Pronounce your name for me again.
It's Joel C. Flanagan-Grannemann.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Joel is an award-winning fantasy author, and we asked him to join our podcast today to talk about his books and about his series. And I'm not going to take the thunder away from you, sir. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about yourself and sell us your books?
All right, I'm Joel Flanagan-Grannemann, as I said, and I'm the author of the Servants of the Moon and Sun series. It's an epic fantasy retelling of Sleeping Beauty, based on the idea of what if Maleficent was Aurora's mother, and what if she wasn't really evil. And that idea came to me in September 2019, and I was in the right place at the right time, and I started writing this series. I wrote the first two books, which is Talia, Heir to the Fairy Realm, and Talia on the Shore of the Sea. I wrote those together. In the editing process, we split them up into the first two books. And then I've also got a third book, Fairy Court in Exile. And then the fourth book in the series is Mother of Exiles. And we're working on the fifth book right now. It's in the editing process, and it's going to be a direct sequel to Mother of Exiles. And we're at the paper editing stage, so we're probably going to be done with that by the end of this month, and then get into cover releases and all that stuff with the September fall release on that book five right as at the moment. Excuse me.
No worries. I was reading through the excerpt that you sent us, I believe, from your first book, and I was picking up, and I may be reading too much into this, but I was picking up a sense of fun. It looked like you were having fun writing the scenes between the interaction between the prince and the fairies. And the problem with these podcasts that CC and I are having is our to-be-read pile is getting higher and higher, and I can see these books getting thrown on top of there. But tell us about the fun about writing your book.
I really appreciate that. I really appreciate hearing that people are enjoying my stories. I guess I wanted to write, because I have a lot of influences, and I wanted to write a story that I wanted to read, using magic that was fun for me. That's why a lot of the fairies use telekinesis. They use it very casually. They use magic very casually. And that's something, as a kid, I always wanted to just pick up something from the table and open doors and that sort of thing. And it's just to write these stories, I might as well have a little bit of wish fulfillment and write characters and stories that I want to read and I find enjoyable. And it was and I started out with the character of Talia and the situation and the ideas, and I just went from there. And I'm a discovery writer, so I'm learning about these characters as I write. I have I know who Talia is, and I know who most of my characters are, but they will constantly surprise me. So that's how I approach the writing, and I'm glad the fun comes across, because I was having a lot of fun writing these, and I continue to have fun writing these.
So you mentioned Maleficent, and Aurora. Were you a big fan of Disney's Snow White growing up, and that story in particular, or is it more of a retelling of kind of the more classic, versus the pop culture? Because there can be a difference between the Disney version of something like that and where the original source material came from. So which one of those was more of your inspiration?
Well, the direct inspiration was the movie Maleficent. We were on vacation in September 2019, and we watched that movie because we were going on a cruise in October, and we were going to see the sequel, so we wanted to watch the first movie. And the movie was fine. It was good. It got really good special effects, and the acting was good. But at the end of the movie, I had because there was this great relationship between Maleficent and Aurora, and they were really going for a kind of the fairy godmother type of thing. But at the end of the movie, I was like, this would be a much better movie if Maleficent was actually her mother. And I went to bed that night, and I thought about this idea, and I just kind of wrote in my head, because I do a lot of that. I do a lot of pre-writing in my head before I sit down at the computer, and I had all these scenes, I had these ideas, these characters, and I woke up in the morning and I wrote out an outline. Basically, I don't really outline, but I wrote up this outline for this story and basic characters, and then I went searching for names because I knew I couldn't use Maleficent because that's a Disney thing. And I went back into Wikipedia and the inspirations for all the Sleeping Beauty myths and the stories, and I found under one of the stories was the name was Talia. And the moment I saw that name, I knew who she was. I knew who this character was. And as I said, she surprises me all the time, but I basically know who she is. So, and I just started writing. And that's where, and now we are in 2025, and I've got 5 books written. I've got about three more sitting on the computer waiting for editing. And, because fairy tales are so, they're so malleable, and you can do pretty much anything with them. You just take those characters, take those basic premises, and you can fit them into anything. And like I always say, you take one idea, you give it to 15 writers, you get 16 different ideas. So that's kind of where I come from.
Excellent. We've done, several of these interviews, and one theme that seems to be common is writers taking breaks from their quote-unquote calling, and you even put that in your bio, that you took a break probably to build up your personal and your professional life, and which is common, and then you found yourself coming back to writing. What about writing sinks the hooks into you? And I'm going to give you a cheat, because Cece and I did similar things, and it was kind of like the world building thing. It was the fun of the world building. Was it something like that, or was it something else?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't really that. I kind of got, when I graduated, I stopped writing when I graduated from college, and we got married. We moved. We both started working. We were working pretty much at the time we were working opposite shifts. So I just didn't have time. I didn't have the time or the mental space to write. And it was always a source of depression for me. Like I had wasted a talent, wasted all this time, and wasted anything that I was. But I could never find the space in my life to do it. And finally, in 2019, I was in the better place in my job and in my personal life, and it just that I finally had the time and the mental space to actually follow through with all these stories that had been kind of building up inside of me. I had all these ideas. We would go to cons, and I'd go sit at author panels, and I'd get depressed because these people did it. Why can't I? And it just wasn't really a conscious decision to work on my professional life. It was more of that life just got in the way, and I just didn't have the time until I sat down and decided I would make the time, and I was in the right place in my life to do that. Give me a second, I gotta get the cat out of the office. She thinks interesting things are happening in here, so I had to get her back out.
That's fine.
Yes, our fur family can sometimes be pests.
The thing that Cece and I really took out of your biography is the writing team, the writing/editing team of yourself and your partner, JJ. Obviously, Cece and I are also a writing editing team. And with her being a professional editor, do you find in your relationship that there's the struggle of what you need to hear versus what you want to hear? Or is she merciless?
She is merciless. I remember a time when we were working on editing book 1, and she said something about a scene was really melodramatic, and I kind of we hadn't exactly figured out our style of editing yet, where how we work together, and I kind of shut down a little bit, and we kind of brushed that aside, and eventually we came back to the scene, and she had either decided it was fine or made some changes, but it had a lot. We had to work out a lot of things. I at the end of the day, we respect each other. She respects my story, and I respect her ability to edit my story, but keeping the feel of it and feel of my voice. A lot of times she'll come to me and say, I know what you're trying to say in this story, but it's not on the page. You need to put it on the page. I know the story. You know the story. You got to put it on the page a little bit more. You got to tweak it a little. Add a few more words, a few more sentences, or maybe take a little bit away, add a little bit. So it's a growing relationship. And we've gotten to a point where we kind of have a shorthand with each other, and we kind of know what we need from each other. But we still run into roadblocks, as we'll run into everything. And eventually we come to, and she makes me a better writer. And that's at the end of the day what I want, what we both want.
Do you ever find that it's a bit of a challenge because you know each other so well? Because when I read JT's work, sometimes I will tell him specifically, I know what you're trying to get at, because we do have that language of our own, and I'm not sure your readers are going to get where you're coming from. Do you have that type of thing happen when she's editing your work as well?
Yeah, sometimes we do, but most of the time we're on the same page. Again, it takes We go do the book in chapter sections, and we do like 3 or 4 chapters at a time. She'll do the edits. She'll send them back to me in Word, and I'll look at her changes and suggestions, and I'll either accept them or change them or do whatever, and then it goes back to her, and then we work through those 5 chapters and we move on. And then we'll come back. I think we did, on this book, we did maybe 5 or 6 passes on each chapter, and in some books, we've done as many as like 10 to 15 passes, and it shows that we're getting better both as a writer and as an editing team. So again, that it takes it takes communication, and it takes time, and sometimes you run into things and you realize you just both got to step back from it for a moment and come back to it in a day or so.
Going to kind of put you on the spot. As writers, we like to sample the genres before we settle on some, but then sometimes we even write in multiple genres. Is there a genre that you will not write in?
I don't think I could do hard science fiction. I do not have the science background. I do not have that sort of mindset. My wife is a huge hard sci-fi fan. She loves Baen books, but that's not where my strength and where my likes lie. So I could probably write a fantasy sci-fi sort of stuff like Star Wars or stuff like that, but harder sci-fi like any of the Baen authors, I could never do that because I just don't have it in me.
Okay, and probably the question you may get the most often is what is your writing routine? Are you a get up and hit the keyboard kind of person, or are you wait for your partner to go to sleep so she doesn't hear you cussing while you're writing?
No, we're we sort of are opposite shifts. I'm an early riser, and she is a night owl. So I work full time, so I'm up and I'm off to work, and I'll do a lot of writing, thinking while I'm at work or on my lunch breaks and in my commute. So I'm thinking about writing. I'm thinking about characters. I'm thinking about scenes and situations. And when I get home, I'll usually spend an hour or so either writing, or if we're in the middle of editing, I'll get the stuff that she's worked on while I'm at work, and we'll go through that. And then on weekends when I'm off, I'll usually try to spend a couple hours in the morning writing or working on stuff. Lately I've been flacking off a little bit from that because I've been just not in the right headspace for it, but I am working on something which I'm kind of working a couple paragraphs and pages at a time, but that's pretty much it. I'll work in the mornings, and when she gets up we'll head into our day and watch TV and do our
Okay, Cece, let's dive into Act 2.
Okay. So for this part of the interview, we've based the questions on James Lipton and the end of his Inside the Actors Studio interviews, only we have changed those questions to be more suitable for writers. So our first question is, what was your I am a real honest-to-goodness writer moment?
All right, I actually have 2 of them. The first one was when my first book came out. I told you my wife is a night owl, so she came to bed that night and I was already asleep and woke me up and told me that my book was live and it was available on ebook, and I think it was a verbal paperback at the time. And I don't think I got any sleep the rest of that night before I had to go to work, and because I was thinking about who I got to text, who I got to email. It'll be too early to text these people, so I got to wait until 8 o'clock. Then I let everybody know my book is out there. And I don't think I touched the floor that entire day at work. I was just so happy the book that we had worked so hard on was finally out there. And the second one was I just went to a con that I'd been Con Carolina up in Charlotte, North Carolina, and my wife and I had been going to this con for a long time, since 2007, I think. But this was the first time I was there as an author guest, and I was on panels, and it was really fun. And I sat beside Wesley Chu, who is a really famous science fiction author. And as we sat down at the panel, he shook my hand, said, and at the end of the panel, he shook my hand and said, great panel. And another author was sitting beside, he shook my hand too. And I really felt I was part of the community finally, and I was part of this author group. And so that was, that's my, I'm a real author now. That A.J. Hartley has shook my hand.
That's awesome. That's pretty exciting. I've been to a few kind of writer cons. I actually went to WorldCon, and when they were doing the Hugo Awards, and met a lot of very interesting authors, but I wasn't a panelist, so I'm a little envious of your experience there. So you mentioned several other authors. Who would be your writing role model and why?
I think that's Janie Wurst. She just finished her War of Light and Shadows epic series of fantasy novels. But when I was a teenager, I read her Cycle of Fire series. It's a 3-book series. It's an amazing story about a coming of age, a clumsy, awkward teenager who becomes a high-powered magic user. And I just saw myself in this character so much, and it got me through high school. In that it was one of those it'll get better moments that I had. And I remember writing a fan email to her, and she responded saying that she really respects the idea that ugly ducklings eventually turn into swans, and you just have to kind of let things work out the way they should, and eventually things will get better. And she is such a great writer. She uses such musicality in her writing and in her magic system, and I pull that idea of music and music in magic into my writings, and I know I'll never be as good as her, but that's all right. She's Janie Wurst and I'm me, and she always says that nobody can tell your story but you, so write your story. So that's my role model.
That's very true. That's something we do. We share that idea that everybody should write their story. So what do you love about writing?
One thing I love that gets me so high is when you can make connections between characters and situations, figuring out a plot hole, and it'll come to you and you realize, oh, that's the way it has to be. Or you have a character, you have two things that are happening in the book, and you realize they're linked somehow, and it makes the story much better. It's those shower moments. It's those walking across the parking lot moments. I remember making the decision that Talia would use a certain type of magic to cast the curse. Remember exactly where I was at work. I was walking up to the hazmat section, to get the labels for something I was taking care of, and I realized, oh, that's the only way that this will work. Because I think about my characters, and I think about the situations a lot and when I'm at work, and it comes to you, and you make that instant, okay, this is the way it has to happen, and that's the best thing about writing for me.
That's a good one, making those connections. So opposite that, what do you dread about writing?
It's the social media promotion. It's not things like, getting on podcasts with you guys, or talking to fans, or going to cons, or anything like that. It's making posts. This is my book. This is me. Follow me. Buy my books, please. All that sort of stuff. That kind of it feels, I try not to be disingenuous, but sometimes it feels very disingenuous. It feels like I'm throwing all this stuff out there, and whether you don't know if it works or not, you get some likes, you get some reposts, you get some interaction, but you never know what is actually going on. And it's really tough, especially with you're on Twitter and you're on Blue Sky, and you're in a community of thousands and thousands of writers all doing the same thing. And it's just, there's so much going on, and everybody's doing the same thing. Everybody's making the same sort of posts, all looking for interaction, looking for sales, looking for readers. It gets exhausting, and you get burnout by it, and you don't know if people are following you or liking you just because they like your posts, or they like you as a person, or they just want to get them to like you. It's all very confusing, and it's all very difficult, and you have to do it, but wanting to do it sometimes, that's very difficult.
That's also very relatable.
Yes.
We have that problem too.
I can see it in your faces. Yes.
Social media, I think about the grains of sand on a beach, and we're all a little tiny grain of sand on social media, and the trends or the waves that come and wash us away, and every once in a while something will just pop up, but otherwise you're just getting washed out to sea. Mm-hmm. So what single significant life
metaphor.
Experience affects your writing, good or bad?
I think it was, I work retail. I've been working retail for maybe 30 years now. It'd be 30 years in November. And when I started out real low, and I became, a supervisor, and increasingly bigger teams I was supervising. And I really got burnout by that. And when I saw that, when we had some really bad store managers, or especially really bad one, who has influenced a lot of my villains in my books, just to say that, a position opened up that was not customer facing, that was in the back room, that was dealing with shipping and receiving, and I jumped at it. And that was what having that job, allowing me this headspace, allowed me to, when I got the idea for Talia on the Heir to the Fairy Realm, to actually start writing and follow through and keep on writing. And as bad as it may seem, having that bad store manager and those bad experiences helped me, because I could take a lot of those negative emotions and turn them into positive.
Really good way of looking at it.
And I think that you would be the kind of boss that I would love to work for. I'm just going to say that right up front.
I'm a very good boss. I lead by example, and that was the way I was taught from my parents. That's the way I want to be led. I want to be led by example, and so that's what I do. And I don't manage anymore. I'm part of a team. I can still do those. I lead by example. I do what's right, and that's it.
I think that type of leadership is for the best, because sometimes people are do as I say and not as I do, and I don't think that works at all.
Exactly.
So your wife does editing for you, and I'm not sure if she does any writing of her own, but would you recommend the writing life to a loved one, and why?
I would, conditionally. If you have a story you want to tell, if you have something you want to say, if you have a song, if you have a poem, if you want to write, you should write it. But if you're just doing it to say you're a writer, or to think that you're going to make money right off the bat from it, no, definitely you should not. But if you have a story you want to tell, go ahead. Maybe you're only telling it to yourself and a couple friends and loved ones, but you're still telling your story, and that's really important.
It's also very true. I think too many people expect to become overnight successes, and I think most of us know that's not the case.
Yeah, we're on the 15-year overnight success plan.
I'm on the 40-year plan, thank you. So this last question is the one that we have had the most fun with the authors that we've interviewed, because some of them we do know in person, and we got some really surprising answers that were completely outside of what we imagined the person to be. What is something unexpected in your past that we won't see in your bio?
I've been thinking about this question since you sent it to me in email, and I think it's the fact that I grew up on a hippie commune, that I grew up with parents who were part of the '60s draft resistance in Pittsburgh, and all their friends and all the other people around in this big community. That's part of it. And tangential to that question, another podcast asked me about how I write women characters so very well, and I kind of gave them the answer that I've worked in retail, I've been in the humanities in college, so I was always around a lot of women, a lot of different kind of women. And I just took that as inspiration, and I could take various people I know, people I've met, and put them into my characters. And my wife was on the podcast with me, and she said, "Yes, and you grew up around with a very strong feminist mother, and all her friends who are also very strong feminists, but in different ways, and showing different ways that they were strength of faith, strength of thought, strength of action, and all these different examples of how women are, and how you can be a wife and a mother, but not just a wife and a mother, and all these various different kinds of energy." And so I think growing up in that sort of environment really helped me as a writer, and I didn't kind of realize that until she pointed it out, which is what a good editor and a good partner does.
That's fascinating, and sounds like it would be the good basis of a story.
Yeah, I bring in a lot of found family into my writing, found families, and I get a lot of influence from how I grew up, because I grew up. My stepdad is my dad. He was there at my birth. He's been the only dad I know. I knew my father, but he was more of a family friend in a way. It sounds a little strange. I'm an early child of divorce, and you see that a lot more in the future generations. But it was kind of strange when I was growing up. You didn't see that very much, but you see that a lot more. And the found family aspect of my growing up with my parents' friends and all their circle, has influenced a lot, because I write a lot about sisterly bonds, not just of birth, but of experiences, and a lot of both sister and brotherly bonds between characters, and how the situations bind them together. Tragedy and trauma binds people together, how a common goal binds them together. Mother of Exiles is about this community that has come together to protect women and their half-fairy children, and people fleeing abuse, and and massacres. So it's all about communities coming together to protect each other and the people that have to stand on the front lines and protect them.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I was just so caught up in your answer, I forgot this is the part where I talk. Okay, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. Joel, with where we can find you on the information superhighway. What's your website, and what are your preferred dreaded social media sites?
Yes. The best place to find me is at my website, www.servantsofthemoonandsun.com. There you'll find links to all my socials. I'm on Twitter, but not as much. I'm more active on Blue Sky lately because it's just a better community. There you can also sign up for my mailing list. There you'll get a every 2 weeks email from me. It's just basic, this is where we are in our writing process, this is where we're in our editing process, a little bit about what's going on personally with and a lot of cat information, because we have 2 cats, and where we're going and where we're going to go and that sort of thing. It's just a brief email, comes out on the 2nd and the 16th of every month. And any sales or special deals and special information will come out on the email list first before I post it to social media. And
Excellent.
One more thing, raccoon pictures. I
Go for
post
it.
a lot of raccoon pictures on my socials.
Oh, that's fun.
I post a lot of raccoon pictures on my
Excellent.
socials.
Okay, if CC doesn't have anything else, do you have anything else? Nope. Nope, all good. Okay, let me see if I can practice your last name here. Joel Flanagan-Grannemann. Did I get it close?
You got it. Yes, you did. You got it.
Anyway, we thank Joel for joining us here on the CC and JT Amateur Hour. We, as part of our series to interview writers, to learn about their works, to learn about their technique, to learn about their passion. And Joel, again, you have added to our to-be-read books. Again, thank you so much for that. I'm looking forward to reading your first book. I'm looking forward to reading the entire series. So thank you for introducing yourself and introducing us to your books.
Thank you. It was a
Thank
pleasure
you for having
talking
me.
to you today.
It was really fun.
Okay, take care. Thank you, everybody.
A lot of fun.
Talk to you later.
You
Bye.
too.
Bye.